Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing do this to make your dumper desperate. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Subscribe to my weekly support emails. The link is in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing do this to make your dumper desperate. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need them to want and desire you. But how can you turn up their desperation dial? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 ways that you can make your dumper feel desperate. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is social media journey. Now this is a suggestion which is going to be very helpful for most of you listening, and the reason I say this is because it hits 2 main points. The first point is that it is encouraging self-improvement, self-growth, becoming a version 2.0 of yourself. That's necessary irrespective of whatever your goal or plan is in the future. We must always be growing, we must always be improving. But in the context of today's podcast about trying to increase the fact of your ex-dumper feeling desperate and wanting to reconnect with you, we can tie in this personal growth with a journey that you are showcasing on social media. What this means is you are going to be discussing things that you are going to achieve and showcase that journey via progress. And this isn't just going to be one thing. This is going to be multiple things and situations, perhaps things also that your ex-dumper wished you would showcase in the relationship. But what's really important to say is that it can't just be that. So for instance, if your ex-dumper felt frustrated that you couldn't drive, imagine a situation where you couldn't drive and they always had to do the driving. They always had to drive to you, they always had to pick you up. Maybe this was frustrating them. Now I'm not suggesting that this was the reason you were dumped per se, but for this instance, we're going to say that they were frustrated that you couldn't drive. So one of the things you could do in this instance during your social media journey, this growth journey, is showcase you learning how to drive. Now this is probably going to take a while, so you can be doing posts discussing you were on your first driving lesson, or maybe you are starting driving lessons again. Maybe you could mention places you have gone, things you have done, experiences you have had, photos where appropriate, showcasing locations or what you're doing. Obviously not exactly when you're behind the wheel, but you know what I'm getting at here. Showing that you are learning to drive and continuing to show this until you get to that point where you do pass your driving test. You can have a photo showing that you've achieved this goal, etc., etc. Now this is obviously going to be something that if and when your ex-dumper sees, they're going to be impressed. And even if you think, well, my ex doesn't follow me on socials anymore, well, even if they don't, they often find a way of viewing what you're posting, either directly, either indirectly, by somebody else telling them, a friend of a friend, etc., or perhaps, and this might surprise you, sometimes dumpers will find sneaky ways to try and see what you're up to. There are websites people can use, maybe they make a burner account, whatever it may be, your ex-dumper is likely to find out information that you post online. So this social media journey is to include, as I've just said, something perhaps that you know that your ex-dumper wish you had achieved. But it can't just be that. It can't just be so obvious that you're trying to tick a box, check a box that your ex-dumper is looking for you to do. No, this will include that, but it also needs to go beyond that. It needs to show your journey achieving goals, dreams and aspirations that your ex maybe wasn't even that overly bothered with. Maybe they didn't even know or have any idea that you might be starting to do something new. This has to be a social media journey that includes different things, Yes, some that your ex-dumper would like you to do and achieve, but also ones that they didn't necessarily have any idea that you were planning on, because this is how you show personal growth. You need to become that version 2.0 of yourself, and you need to be an attractive individual that your ex-dumper is going to be desperate to want to reconnect with. Even if they don't necessarily think, well, I want to get my ex back, I want to get back with my dumpee. If they don't think that straight away, the first step might be them being curious as for why you are doing certain things that you have said you're doing online. That might just bring them out of their shell, bring them out of their hidey hole for them to contact you and ask what you're doing, or maybe to give you some encouragement and say, I'm impressed. I've seen what you're doing. This is amazing. I never saw this coming. So you've got to use the power of social media. Even if you're someone who doesn't generally post too often, there is no harm in starting to do so. I'm not saying you have to post 5 times a day, especially if you're not someone who normally does. But even if you don't even have an account right now, you can start one on one of the main socials and just post once a week. That's absolutely fine. And like I said, your ex-dumper will likely find out about this. Doesn't matter if they follow you or not, they will find a way. It tends to happen. You just have to view it as a situation where you are doing this for you, you're putting this out into the world, and they will find out one way or another. It goes without saying, make sure your profiles are public. So for instance, if you have it on private, it's now time to make it public. And if you blocked your ex, well, unless you're protecting your mental health, which if you are, you need to do, that needs to be your main focus in this element. If you're trying to protect your mental health by blocking your ex, you will have to do that. And this might not be a point which can help you directly, but as I've said, other people can still pass that information on to your ex. They will likely find out. But if your mental health is okay, and perhaps you blocked your ex because you felt it was the right thing to do, well, I would suggest unblocking your ex, making sure your profile is public, make it as easy as possible for your ex or for people who know your ex to view what you're posting, and therefore for your ex-dumper to find out about your social media journey. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you have the new hype feature, please hype this video as well. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel to keep updated. And point number 2 is the gathering. Now the gathering is something that I suggest you do to not only showcase what you have been achieving, but to really present yourself as somebody who is feeling more confident as a single person. And you might think, well, I'm not confident. Well, sometimes you have to fake it before you make it a little bit here. Now the gathering is something I suggest you do by inviting numerous friends and or family to your house, to where you live, to have a gathering to hang out. Now you might think, well, I do this anyway, but even if you do spend time with friends, which I hope you do, this is going to be a little larger, a little grander, something that if your ex-dumper was to find out about, well, maybe they'd be a bit jealous that they're not invited, because of course they're not. And that's the point. You're having a gathering, you're having friends round, family round, people round other than your ex. Is it a party? Well, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that whole elaborate party side of things, although it could be. Like I said, it could just be seen as a gathering, some time to hang out, maybe have something to eat, maybe watch something, do something, but more importantly, there needs to be opportunity for you all to speak, because we want you to present yourself to your friends as someone who is living their best life. Now, you probably have, and I hope you have, best friends who know exactly what's going on, and you're talking to them and you're trusting them, but you're also going to have friends a little bit further out of your circle, people you still count as friends rather than acquaintances, but maybe they don't know exactly what's going on and how you're living your life. These are the people to invite, because not only are they more likely to pass on information to your dumper, but we just want everybody to see you in a positive light. Someone who is not feeling negative, someone who is not feeling angry or bitter. The point of this gathering is to be your best self. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to totally lie if you're feeling really, really low, but I'm just saying try and be as positive as you can and discuss the things that you're doing. Remembering point number 1 about social media journey? Well, this is where you can promote that journey in a real life setting, not just online, but actually discussing in person. Looking your best is something you can also do in this type of situation. Of course, you can put photos on socials, but people always wonder how many photos were taken to get to that one great photo. If you're looking your best in an actual physical gathering, well, people know. They'll be saying, look, you're doing really, really well. I was worried about you, but now look at you. You look great. And this is where you want to be taking time on your health, your fitness, making sure you eat healthy, making sure you get enough sleep, making sure you remove bad substances from your life, making sure you get enough exercise. Prepare yourself before you arrange the gathering so you do look and feel as good as you can. Try to make the situation, an event, something which is fun, where everybody is smiling, having a good time, and just trust the universe that your ex-dumper will find out about this. Of course, you're not inviting them. Of course, you're not texting them to say, hey, you're not invited. You're not doing that at all. But if you invite enough of your friends, and like I said, those on the peripheral, perhaps, of your friendship group, those people are probably going to let your ex know about this. And this is going to increase a bit of wonder, a little bit of intrigue, a bit of jealousy, perhaps. And when they find out afterwards how well you're doing, how good you look, and what you are achieving, this is another great way to make your ex-dumper feel desperate. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is the trip. Now, the trip is a very interesting concept, so please listen up about how this can increase the chance of your ex-dumper feeling desperate for you and hopefully getting them to reach out. Because like I said, that can be the first step of reconnection. It doesn't necessarily mean that your ex-dumper is going to be feeling desperate to say, hey, I really miss you, let's get back together right now, let's get back together today. You know, it might not happen in that way, but what we're trying to do is get your ex-dumper desperate to reach out to you. Because if and when they do, conversations can grow and things can go in your favour. And the trip is a really interesting concept, because this is where, once again, you're going to be using socials as a way to try and intrigue your ex into reaching out to you. Now, this is where you're going to be planning a trip in the future, which, as we've already mentioned, your ex-dumper is likely to find out about one way or another. So you're going to be mentioning this on socials fairly regularly, almost discussing the planning aspect of this. Now, is this similar to point number 1? Well, you can kind of almost tie it in with point number 1, but it is different in some key areas. This is a trip that you are genuinely going to go on, okay? So you need to be making sure that you plan a trip, and ideally it's going to be somewhere a little bit further afield. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got to go to a different country, although it could. It is going to be something, though, that needs to be fairly far away from where you currently live. And the reason for this is because you aren't going to be making it clear on your socials whether you are actually moving or whether this is just a trip. Now, this isn't you lying. This is just going to be something that you coincidentally forget to make clear in your socials, okay? So you're not going to be making it clear if you're actually moving there or whether you are just going on a holiday or vacation or a trip. Now, you are literally just going on a trip, maybe it's a week, 2 weeks, maybe it's longer. Maybe you are going for a few months somewhere, but in your mind, you are coming back home. You're not going to make that clear, though, in your social media. You're going to be posting things such as, I've decided in a few months I'm going to be going to wherever, okay? And you need to be making it clear about how excited you are for this new adventure, how excited you are to experience new things, how excited you are to see how things are different in a new place. You're trying to make it somewhat unclear whether you are staying for a few days or whether you are going forevermore. This is how we can try and intrigue your ex to reach out to you. Now remember, you're not lying. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm just asking you to make it a little bit unclear about what you're doing. And the reason for this is because if and when your ex-dumper finds out, if they start to believe you might be going away forever, there is a stronger possibility their desperation dial might move up to the point of where they want to reach out. Now remember, you are going to go on this trip, and I'm not suggesting you lie to your ex if and when they reach out to you. If they say, hey, are you moving to so-and-so? No, you've got to then say, no, well, I'm not moving. I'm just going for a certain period of time. But that is where the door has been opened for you to have that communication. And when you do go, well, you need to be posting about what you're doing and the experiences you're having. Plenty of photos, plenty of interesting information about you really, really enjoying it. So if your ex-dumper hasn't reached out before you go, well, you go and you show the trip online, doing what you would do, as we've discussed about this whole social media journey, just promoting yourself, presenting yourself in the right way. Again, I'm not suggesting you lie, and when it comes to the end of a trip, obviously, you just go back home. This isn't guaranteed to work because sadly, nothing is. But I have had a lot of success with my audio coaching clients, encouraging them to do things somewhat similar, trying to get their ex-dumper to reach out because they're not really sure what their dumpee is doing. So I suggest if you want to really turn up that desperation in your ex's mind, well, you need to go on a trip.